It's Tuesday, we're rolling into week 3 of fantasy football, and you know what time it is. It's waiver wire day. Tuesday, Wednesday, hot days for the waiver wire, and we got to look at them wide receivers. But the thing I'm going to tell you about this wide receiver class for the week 3 waiver wire kind of sucks. It kind of sucks, but we're going to look at them guys. We're going to look at the advanced metrics. We're going to see what you want off the waiver wire because we're going to talk about a ton of wide receivers. But before we dig in, you need to click that subscribe button right now. Tap with your finger and phone, click it with the mouse on your computer because Ric Flair's watching you. Anderson Silver's watching you. You do not want to disappoint them. Also, we're talking waiver wire every day. We're helping you set your lineups with these videos, and we're doing deep dives on the trending players with the You Need series. Click that button. Stop missing out. The first wide receiver today that we're going to talk about, Rashid Shaheed. Deep ball city with this dude. Deep targets. And like I said, he has the potential to splash on any given Sunday with big time production. He's going to get 5 targets a game and a good average depth of target. And if he brings in that deep ball, it's home run city for your fantasy team. We hit on back-to-back weeks, which is rare for Shaheed. Last year, he was hitting on about once every 4 or 5 games. It might revert back to that, or we might have a new Rashid Shaheed where he's a little bit more consistent. I would pick him up, and I would mess around with him in matchups and see what happens, especially if he's still there. He shouldn't be there. He's rostered in 56% of leagues as of last night on Sleeper, so he might still be there. There is risk week to week. But when I look at wide receivers off the waiver wire and I'm trying to set a lineup, there are wide receivers there that will probably get you a safe 10 to 12 points. And then there will be wide receivers there that could score you like 4 points, but also have the potential to score you 25 to 30 like Rashid Shaheed. But really, when you think of the grand scheme of things of between those two players, that 10-point player and that boom player, if that boom player falls on his face, you're only looking like a 5 to 6 point difference. So a guy like Rashid Shaheed, if you're shooting for upside, he fails on you, don't worry about it too much. But the upside's so grand, you got to chase it sometimes. Tyler Johnson, I'm going to get through these Rams wide receivers. He's seeing routes, he's seeing targets, he's seeing opportunity. He's going to be on the field. He's going to be more expensive now. He should be rostered. I told you guys to roster. But again, we're going over the whole list of wide receivers, whatever I could think of, to grind it out for you guys. If you're hurting a wide receiver, get him. I'm not super excited through the moon with him. He caught 2 balls for 20 yards last week, 5 catches for 79 the week prior. He's getting a short average depth of target, 4.2 ADOT. I don't like that. He's getting a decent target share, but still the ADOT's too short for him to be consistent unless he is Puka Nacua. He was a good prospect coming out of college, but not good enough or have the speed to rack up that yards after the catch. If you're getting a 4.2 ADOT, you're going to have to get some goal line looks. Demarcus Robinson is the wide receiver I want out of this offense. He should be rostered. He's rostered in 56% of leagues on Sleeper, so I do not know what's going on there. So he is a guy that needs picked up immediately right now due to there's nobody else to run routes on this team. There's nobody else to run routes. He is the dependable veteran from last year. He was productive. He's shown a little bit of production, a little bit of life right now. He's getting targets. He's getting a decent ADOT, a 12.1 average depth of target on the season so far, so he's getting deeper targets. So if those bring in, he could have some good production. We're going up against the Niners next week. That ain't going to be fun. Jordan Whittington, keep him on the radar. He's going to be playing out of the slot. He's going to be used off and on. He's going to be used around the line of scrimmage. He's going to be getting those deep targets. Look for him to get more work. I look at him as a stash in deeper leagues or traditional leagues. You're probably going to have a hard time rostering. But again, I did a You Need video on him, and he's got some upside in his offense as that young wide receiver who seems to be very dependable that the coaching staff likes. Jalen Nailor, Hawk out. Jefferson just got banged up. Addison was banged up and didn't play. He ran on 100% of the routes. Looks like he's going to be running a lot more routes going forward, getting a lot more opportunities. And they were talking about him as the replacement in the passing game for Hawkinson for those targets. Now he's going to be getting more opportunity. You may not want this, you may not need this, but he's a wide receiver that's going to be in some matchups where they're just going to have to push the ball. He's got Houston next week. That's going to be a fun matchup for the Vikings. This is a player that's not going to be a guarantee, but he's also a player in a great situation, and he's also got some talent. He's got some sticky hands and some ball skills. Very underrated talent here with Jalen Nailor. Jalen Polk's that rookie wide receiver with a lot of upside that could splash later in the season, and he's starting to tremble, showing that upside. He's starting to flash it up. He's got 4 targets at 12.5% target share. He's ran on 68.8% of the routes, 51 air yards, 20.8% air share here. But again, we scored that touchdown, and they're spreading out the routes among the wide receivers, so it's not like you got this one guy or 2 guys hogging up the routes. He's getting workload. He's getting opportunities. He's got the talent to take over. They got some veterans there that could be good gatekeepers, but if he rises past those gatekeepers and becomes the guy, that's a wide receiver that could break out this year, especially if Drake May ever gets his opportunity and they start pushing the passing game a little bit more. The volume in the passing game is what you're going to wonder about, but he's got some quicks. He's got some speed. He's very assertive. Eventually, he's going to get some opportunity, and that could lead to fantasy production. Brandin Cooks, if he's still on the waiver wire, he shouldn't be. I told you to pick him up. He's been getting targets. He had a low game last week, so he might get dropped. But again, that was a weird matchup. Weird things happened. We got Baltimore coming up, so you may not want him there. Brandin Cooks is another wide receiver to look at here. Jalen Tolbert is on the rise. I told you a while back in a unique video that you need to pay attention to him. Now's the time you may want to act here. You may want to act because he's running a lot of routes. He's seeing targets. He's going to get an average depth of target. He switched from 18 to the number 1 this offseason, so he's got that jersey drip to him. So that's going to be in his favor when it comes to karma. Jalen Tolbert might not be that player that wins your league, but might be that player that just has these random games that helps your fantasy team. Khalil Shakir shouldn't be on waivers. He's got a 68% roster rate, but if he is, you may want to look at him because the Bills are going to start throwing the ball more. They haven't thrown the ball much this season, but he's still seen 8 targets in 2 games, still running a fair amount of routes per game, seeing a lower ADOT than what we would predict. Deep balls are going to start coming, targets are going to start flowing, and Shakir's upside is going to get touched a little bit more. Quentin Johnston is here, 11 targets in 2 games, running 21 routes per game, which is a lot in this offense because it's a low-volume offense when it comes to passing with the hard ball there. 57.5 air yards a game, 39.7% share of the air yards, so that's good, and the ADOT solid. So 25% target share and 11 ADOT. We blew up with 2 touchdowns last week. Everybody's looking at him. He's a guy to have on your bench that could do something. He's a guy to have on your bench. I would not look at him as a must start every week until we get more consistent, but Quentin Johnston is a guy here that is getting the work rate of a guy that could blow up. 25% target share, a deep ADOT. We showed off with 2 touchdowns. Josh Palmer came in banged up, played less routes and snaps, so that impacted that. But he also earned those targets, won downfield, made those catches, so he might earn more. Week 2, he was on the field. Second most routes ran on the team, getting opportunities, and it just didn't roll his way week 1. So he might have some more matchups where he hits. So he might be a guy you're wanting to roster for your bench to see what happens. Josh Downs is going to come back sooner than later. Has not played yet. Will push for a good target share. Will be competing in this offense with Alec Pierce has been going ham. He has been looking good in this offense. He's been getting the deep ball. He is deep ball city. 7 targets against the Packers, 4 catches, 56 yards, and a touchdown. He brings in the deep ball. He scores in major fantasy points. A wide receiver who's trending up right now and might be a guy that's off and on due to that because you got a 23 average depth of target. That means deep ball city is going his way. That means he might get overshot on some passes, which might hurt his upside in some games or cause him to hit that downside because we see wide receivers do that all the time. That's his portfolio, is an up and down wide receiver due to how he plays the game. But those ups are high, man. Those ups are high. Jacob Cowing, pay attention to him. Debo is going to be out for a few weeks. He's a very good rookie wide receiver. Looked good in training camp. Runs great routes. I would not be surprised if he emerges somewhere down the line. Jennings, though, is a safer play because he's getting workload. He's getting opportunities. He is the veteran. So you may want to roll with him if you want to roll with a Niners wide receiver. But Yoshi was getting volume. Yoshi scored fantasy points last week. And if you started him, you enjoyed it. T. Higgins will be back soon, but he's going to be a part of this offense. We saw Burton get some opportunities as well. So he might be a guy you use in a pinch. I'm not looking at him as a must pick up, but if I'm playing matchups, you got Washington coming up, and you're hoping they push for more air yards going forward, maybe Yoshi is a hope and prayer scenario for you. Jeudy's getting volume. He's getting opportunity. He's a wide receiver to look at here. 7 targets a game. You can't beat that. An 8 out of 13. The ball's going downfield, pushing a 20% target share. In deeper leagues, you may want to look at Elijah Moore because he's getting similar workload and he's getting volume. And Deshaun Watson has been sucking, but it's sucking in a good way or a not so good way, kind of good way, a good way, or a narcissistically good way, or however you want to say it, because these wide receivers are at least getting workload, and that could tend to them to hit in the right matchups or if the ball rolls their way. Jalen McMillan, 2.5 targets per game, 10.2 target share in these 2 games, 27 routes ran per game, 19 ADOT. So he's a guy that's on the field a lot. He's on the field just as much as Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. He's still rosterable. He's still a guy to stash because in the right matchup, right game, you may want to throw him in there once bye weeks hit or if you start seeing injuries on your team. Wan'Dale Robinson, slower game last week, 4 targets. The targets need to go to Neighbors. They don't need to go to Wan'Dale Robinson. I don't care what the game is or what the script is for the game or what's going on with the game. The targets need to go to Neighbors. He's averaging 8 targets a game, 24.6% target share. It's still very high. Most of that's in week 1. But again, I don't care what the matchup's saying. Neighbors needs more targets. He needs to keep getting funneled. Wan'Dale Robinson, though, he's a good stash play, a good pickup play week to week because he is going to get enough workload to be fantasy relevant. Dontayvion Wicks scored that touchdown. I'm really not excited about the Packers wide receivers, but Wicks is a guy that has a lot of upside. He's a good stash, especially for when Love comes back. He's very talented, stretched the field, and he has very good ball skills. Gabe Davis is that wide receiver that does nothing and then all of a sudden blows up, does nothing, all of a sudden blows up, and will give you 5 games out of the season randomly where he scores 25 fantasy points. And the thing about that, you either want it or you don't. You might get sick of those games where he sucks, and then you bench him on the games he goes off. Or you play the matchups, you're good at that, and you want a wide receiver like that because you feel confident you're going to cash in 90% of the time. And that's totally on you, and that's how you play the game. But I'm going to throw those wide receivers at you because I do not know who's watching this, and I do not know how you want to strategize. But I like to throw strategy out there with some of these players because it's not always player good versus player bad. Sometimes it's how this player fits in the situation you want to do for your team. Sometimes you need an upside player for a hope and prayer because you're playing the best team in your league and you got to score more fantasy points than usual. And even if this player over here scores well, they don't have the upside enough to really get you over. So you want to throw in that upside wide receiver to give you a better chance to win that matchup. And there's other reasons for that as well. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Make sure to hit that subscribe button on the way out. One, thank you for watching. Catch you on the next video.